Criminal and Civil Procedures module. There are 9 lessons with their corresponding desired objectives to be achieved by participants within this module. At the end of these short lessons, participants should be familiar with the basic factual information applicable to criminal and civil procedures in the United States as well as the state of Ohio. Of course, we have to have a disclaimer, right? All the information provided in these short lessons is publicly available and provides a simplified view of criminal and civil procedures in the state of Ohio for participants to gain a basic understanding. Remember, procedures vary across jurisdictions, so it is important to always check the steps in the process in the jurisdiction you are working. This information is not intended to be construed as legal advice. Participants will also be able to identify key concepts along with their corresponding legal terminology and know how to use them appropriately. Participants will also be provided resources to complete the individual assignments and are encouraged to use the same to build personal glossaries by incorporating the legal terminology used in these lessons so they can interpret them correctly and use them appropriately into their working languages. Lesson 8. A brief overview to identify some of the most common civil charges in Ohio according to the Ohio Rules of Civil Procedure. The objective here is to identify some of the most common types of civil cases heard by the Ohio judicial system. The Ohio Legislature indicates the Ohio Revised Code as the compilation of the general laws of the state of Ohio. The Revised Code is organized into 31 general titles broken into chapters dealing with individual topics of law. The chapters are divided into sections which contain the text of individual statutes. The laws are collected and published in the Ohio Revised Code, also known as the ORC or RC by its initials. Obviously, it is not possible in this short lesson to list all the types of civil cases that can occur within the state of Ohio and that are heard in the Ohio courts. However, we will mention some of the most common civil cases, and you can find a complete statistical listing in the Ohio Court Statistical Report 2016, which is found in the Supreme Court of Ohio website. A general definition is also provided using either the C&O Legal Glossary listing on the Ohio Supreme Court website, the Glossary of Commonly Used Court and Justice System Terminology from 2011, available in the National Center for State Courts website, or a reference is made to the Ohio Revised Code. The Ohio Rules of Court establish the rules of practice and procedure in the Ohio courts. When discussing civil matters, one would use the Rules of Civil Procedure as well as the Ohio Revised Code, Title 23 primarily, but other types of cases can be found in the other titles, such as Title 27 or Title 45. Please remember that a consultation with an attorney authorized to practice law in the state of Ohio would be necessary if seeking legal advice or specific legal information. Once again, remember that interpreters need to be familiar with any and all of the variations of these terms in their working languages. A tort. A tort is a civil injury or wrong committed on the person or property of another. A tort is an infringement on the rights of an individual, but not founded on a contract. The most common tort action is a suit for damages sustained in an automobile accident. You can also see ex delicto according to the Glossary of Commonly Used Court and Justice System Terminology. For a comprehensive definition and the various types of torts in Ohio, see Chapter 2307, Period 7.1 of the Ohio Revised Code. A tort action means a civil action for damages for injury, death, or loss to person or property. Tort action includes a product liability claim, as defined in Section 2307, Period 71 of the Revised Code, and an asbestos claim, as defined in Section 2307, Period 9(1) of the Revised Code, but does not include a civil action for damages for a breach of contract or another agreement between persons. As a general definition, class action is a lawsuit in which one or more members of a large group sue on behalf of the entire group. The court must find that the claims of the members contain questions of law or fact in common before the lawsuit can proceed as a class action. However, for a more comprehensive definition of what types of lawsuits are applicable, please see Title 23 of the Ohio Revised Code. A breach: the breaking or violating of a law, right, obligation, or duty, either by doing an act or failing to do an act. A contract: an agreement between two or more people that creates an obligation to do or not to do particular things. This is according to the C&O Legal Glossary and the Legal Glossary of Commonly Used Court and Justice System Terminology. A more comprehensive definition of how these civil matters get handled in Ohio can be found in Title 23 of the Ohio Revised Code. Negligence: failure to exercise the degree of care that a reasonable person would use under the same circumstances. A more comprehensive definition of what constitutes negligence in a specific civil case in Ohio can be found in the Ohio Revised Code. Foreclosure: procedure by which mortgage property is sold on default of the mortgagor in satisfaction of mortgage debt. A more comprehensive definition can be found in Chapter 2308 of the Ohio Revised Code. Libel: published words or pictures that falsely and maliciously harm the reputation of a person. Defamation: that which tends to injure a person's reputation. Libel is published defamation, whereas slander is spoken. A more comprehensive definition can be found on Title 27, Chapter 2739, Period 01 of the Ohio Revised Code. As you can see, each term can be a lesson in itself. Since our lesson time is limited, here is a listing of other common civil complaints: landlord-tenant issues, eviction, real property claims, domestic issues like divorce, child support, custody and visitation, and division of the marital property, contracts. Remember that these are disputes over an agreement, usually for the payment of money for services or goods. Personal injury. Remember, this is an action to recover damages, usually money, for injuries sustained due to someone else's fault. As an additional individual activity, please research for the general definition, check to see if the meaning changes depending on the nature of the case, and identify the source where you found the term. Finally, add these into your working languages glossary by researching for the translations of each. In Lesson 8, the key points to remember are: the Ohio Revised Code and the Rules of Civil Procedure provide the guidelines for civil matters, as well as define what the cases are called and where these cases are heard in the Ohio courts. While every case is unique, there are plenty of common civil cases heard by the Ohio courts. In some instances, the nature of the case and what is being sought will determine where the case is heard. Individual activity. Complete the exercise by identifying a definition for the types of civil cases and, if possible, where these are located in the Ohio Revised Code. End of Lesson 8.